Okay, good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
Today we conclude our May program series on sports and athletics, and next month we move into health and wellness. I think that's what it is next week. So we have today, to conclude this series, Sharon Hargrove. Sharon was raised in Perryton, Texas, a small town in the panhandle of Texas, and met her future husband, Mike, when they were in junior high. They married during college and both graduated with teaching degrees from Northwestern State College in Alva, Oklahoma. In 1972, Mike was drafted by the Texas Rangers, and so began their 37-year career in baseball. He played for 12 years in the major leagues, then went back to the minor leagues as a coach and manager, and then went to the Indians as a coach and manager, and managed for 9 seasons, which included 5 division championships and 2 World Series runs. He later managed for the Orioles and the Seattle Mariners, and is currently a senior advisor for the Indians, and he's not here today, right? He sent Sharon instead. Sharon is the author of a book about raising a family in baseball called Safe at Home. She was a columnist for the Indians, Inc. and did a weekly radio show on WHBC in Canton for over 11 years. She is also currently actively involved in a number of charitable organizations. Sharon and Mike have 5 children, married children, and 13 grandchildren so far. I think they expect more. They reside in Richfield, Ohio, and Tucson, Arizona, and hopefully they're settled down now, because over their 37-year career, they made more than 100 moves to 23 cities in 13 states. So please extend a warm Rotary welcome to Sharon Hargrove.
Is anybody getting it yet? Woo! Mike was known as the human rain delay, and I always say if he was fast, we'd have more than 5 kids. So I was actually kind of thankful that he was slow. And besides, when you're slow, you never get hurt. He had a long career in baseball and never was on the DL, but you have to be fast to get hurt. So. Anyway, I don't know if I got my lipstick on straight. New best friends, Lori, and okay, I look good. Okay. Anyway, wait, I lost one more of my props. Oh my gosh! It's my extended fork in case I get hungry while I'm up here. Does anybody have breakfast left on their? Aha! I see. All right, jokes aren't over. Sorry, they get worse. Just a minute. So I know that this dates back to probably a month or so ago, or longer, I'm sure. Mike and I winter in Tucson, Arizona, and we got a call from the Indians asking Mike to speak today at this event. And him hawed around, I'll get back to you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm always in the background. Mike, either a yes or no, they've got to know, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, he said, you know, I retired for a reason. what if I want to golf that day? And I can't golf that day. And what if something else comes up? What if somebody asks me to do something and I can't leave town because I said I would speak for 20 minutes at Rotary in Hudson on May 31st? And so I finally said, then you're not doing it. That's the answer, right? He said, well, I'm never very good at stuff like that. And I said, Mike, they'll do a Q&A, because he was really good at that. He's good at both, but he likes a Q&A. And so anyway, I called the Indians, because he never did, to tell him he's not going to do it. And so I told Bobby D, or Nate, or whoever you talked to, I'm not sure, Roseanne. Anyway, I said, you know, Mike's not, I can't talk him into it. And they called me back and said, sure, talk him into it. He really needs to do stuff like that once in a while. And so I tried again, and then I thought, it was really a us having a fuss over. So I called back and I said, can't talk him into it, but I said, I'll tell you what, I know they want Mike. If they have trouble finding somebody else, I'll be happy to fill in. And so you're stuck with me. And then I hear Phil say that the program is supposed to be informative and educational. This will be neither. I'm sorry. They didn't tell me that part. So anyway, and Dave, I met Dave this morning, and he's got a connection with John Hart. And you know, Mike and John worked together 9 years, 9 seasons, I think, with the Indians. And I remember one time Mike telling me that John came in his office after the game and he said, Mike, this isn't a second guess, this is a first guess. That was the stupidest damn thing I've ever seen anybody do. So anyway, he and Mike would go round and round about things, and Mike's last line would always be, but John, you're the boss. And they usually really complimented each other. I think a lot of people think they had a real contentious relationship, but they really respect, to this day, respect and admire each other. And I think they did a pretty good job together. And I would say that if Mike had driven me over here today. Yeah, right. He's probably still, oh, that's another thing. Nobody told us it was 7:30 in the morning when they're asking us to do this. Mike thought it was noon was one of the reasons he didn't come. He wanted to golf. So anyway, and then it's just funny what a small world it is. I was sitting here this morning, met Lori, and we were talking about where people are from and blah, blah, blah. And she said, I'm from Cincinnati. So, well, one of our daughters lives in Cincinnati. And I says, matter of fact, she said, where? And I said, Mason. And she told me where she Loveland. And then I said, she is a high school counselor in Milford. And she said, oh my gosh, I was just at Cincinnati's Milford's graduation last week. And she showed me a picture on her phone of her nephew graduating. Our daughter was in charge of the seniors. I said, oh my gosh. So I texted Shelley this morning. And she said, I said, do you know Brady? Kyle Brady? And she said, oh my gosh, yes, he was one of our office aides, and he's a great guy. So it's a small world, and it's just fun to be here with you. And I really don't, you know, I don't ever have a speech. The title, if I had one, would be Bloom Where You're Planted or Transplanted. Since we're from the Panhandle of Texas, my bio kind of is my speech, I guess. I met Mike in 7th grade. I was a 7th grader. He was an 8th grader. In junior high, in a town of 7,000, I look pretty good when you're kin to half the people in town, right? So it was way before he got out into the real world. And I asked him one time, I said, what made you ask me to sit by you at that high school football game? And he said, I kind of been watching you when they come in from football practice. Our gym at the junior high was one of those down in the ground. So you come in at street level and it's got the rail around it. And us 7th grade girls, basketball, half-court basketball, we were studs. And he said I'd come in from football practice and I'd just kind of hang at the rail trying to cool off or something before we took showers. And I said, oh yeah, I knew y'all were there. And anyway, he said, I watched you, and I finally asked somebody, who's that blonde down there that's running around so much? And they said, that's Benny Ruprecht's sister. And he said, you weren't the best player, but you were having the most fun. I didn't really know if that was a compliment or not. But I've always thought, now, if that's what attracted him to me, I better try to keep that. I'm having fun. And I will tell you, we've had a very blessed life. It has certainly not been perfect. Baseball is not a glamorous life, I will tell you. I would not have signed on, nor would have Mike if we'd have read the fine print. But in junior high, this beautiful necklace he gave me that has his name on the front. And we will have been married 47 years this year in December, so I know where this is after 100 moves. So this tells you how important it is. Now, I always thought that my name was on the back of it, but since I've gotten glasses, it's nowhere on here. It just says Mike. So I'm quite certain he's planning on giving it to his next girlfriend. But I still have it. Anyway, so we went to college together. We dated through high school. He was a year ahead of me, so I've always told him, when you want a younger woman in your life, just remember you married her. So don't go looking for her. And we just have always had a good relationship, and we both went to college to get our teaching degrees, so we'd have our summers off together. That was our plan. But thank God that God had a better plan. And we went 42 years without having a summer where we even saw each other. Best 42 years of my damn life. God does answer prayers. When Mike retired, I said, after a while, he was just around all the time. And he would, you know, this is when emails were where everybody would forward jokes all the time. And I'd still be whipping around doing the laundry and da-da-da-da-da. And he'd be sitting in his chair, Sharon, come here. And I'd go in there, what's wrong? Listen to this, listen to what Spellacy sent me. And I'd look over his shoulder and there'd be a joke this long, and I'd go, oh my God, I can sit here and listen to this crap that Spellacy sent you. But I was trying to, you know, be the loving wife and listen. And finally, after a while, I said, Mike Hargrove, I married you for better or worse, not for lunch. Just get out of this house. Oh my gosh, it was horrible. But anyway, it still is. Thank God for golf. So one of the reasons I think they asked me is we all have so much in common. So I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand if your husband or spouse has ever been involved in 2 World Series. Oh, none of you, okay. Raise your hand if you've ever made over 100 moves. Oh, we don't have that. Will you have that in common? I've got one hand up. No. You're a little stinker, aren't you? Raise your hand if you lived in 23 different cities or... No? 13 different states? Oh, I thought we had something in common. Any of you can raise your hand if you were married 25 years before you lived under the same roof for a full year? Oh. You did? Oh, that's a good. We got one. We're best buds there, Joe. How about if you've written a book? Some of you have probably done that. Oh, I'm not here because I'm an author. Oh, there we go. I'll give you a copy of mine if I can find it. How about if you've done a radio show? Oh, I like that. We need to talk too. A bad TV commercial for Drug Mart. Haven't done one of those? Dang. Are you married to a spouse that never called in sick in 37 years? Oh, my phone's ringing. Never mind. How about were you married to a spouse who's been publicly fired twice and quit once? And I got blamed for both of them, which is a side story. We'll get back to our common theme here in a minute. When we left Cleveland, very sadly, we got right away to Baltimore. And we get to Baltimore, and our opening day is against the Indians. Whoa, that was tough. I'm in the stands at the game in Baltimore, and I'm looking and going, I'm not supposed to root for Jim Thome anymore. He's at the plate, or root against Manny Ramirez. It was really strange. But that day, I had just been in town less than 24 hours, tried to get our apartment up and go down to Mike's office. And I couldn't really bring much from Mike's office because everything was Cleveland Indians. So we had pictures of the kids and dogs and anything we could find. And so he left for the ballpark, and we were living in the 21st floor of a condo downtown Baltimore. And he was gone less than about 3 minutes. I hear a knock at the door, and I'm thinking, I didn't know what in the world. And I open the door, and it's Mike. I said, what's wrong, hon? He goes, I thought he probably couldn't find the car. And he said, Sharon, I am so sorry. He said, I was thinking, I haven't told you where to pick up tickets. I don't know where you're supposed to park. I am so sorry. I said, I'm a big girl. I'll figure it out. Just leave me 6 tickets. He said, okay. And I shut the door and turned around. Like, this isn't hard on me. But I look across, and here's Mike's mom in for opening day. And St. Michael. She was not happy. I was not happy with St. Michael. So anyway, I said, Rita, I'm sorry. And about that time, my phone rings. So I go and answer the phone. And I heard this, and I didn't even know we had a phone. And I answer it, and they said, may I speak to Mrs. Hargrove? And I said, okay, just a minute. I'll go get Mike's mom. And I said, how did you know we had a phone? She said, I didn't know you had a phone. And I said, well, somebody wants you on the phone. So she goes to the phone. She comes back, and she goes, Sharon, it's for you, not me. And I said, oh, okay. So I answered the phone, and I said, I don't know who you are, but first of all, I am not Mrs. Hargrove. I am Sharon. He goes, I'm John Angelos, Peter Angelos, the owner's son. Not a good start. So, oh, I'm sorry, John. I appreciate you calling, but please call me Sharon. So he goes, okay. And he goes, well, Sharon, I've been remiss in not getting your manager's tickets to you. And I said, that's fine. And he said, you have a row, and it's 6 seats. It's in section 34. And will 6 be enough? And I said, that's perfect. That's what I need today. He said, well, you can't get the tickets today. So just go in, tell them who you are, which I hate doing, and then go to an usher and tell them that you're the manager's wife, and they'll take you down to row double D. And I said, okay. And he said, then I'll get the tickets when you're coming to a game, let Mike know, and I'll leave the tickets for you. And I said, well, you can just send the tickets home with him today. I come to all the home games. And he goes, well, we've never had a manager's wife that comes to the games. And I said, well, you do now. So he goes, did you write that down? And I said, no, I don't need to. 34 double D is my bra size. Now, I think that's kind of funny, do y'all? Silence on the other end of the phone. This is also not a good start. I already have 2 strikes against me. So after the game, and another side story here, after the game, we get on the elevator. Oh, and I have to tell you another story. See, I'm glad I got more than 20 minutes. No, I'm going to tell that story. It's not nice. But anyway, I got on the elevator, and here's John and Sandy Hart, and I hadn't seen them since we were fired here, you know, and I'm thinking, hi. Anyway, we get home that night. I'd made Mike's favorite meal, meatloaf, baked potatoes, the whole 9 yards. We're all eating dinner. And so I start telling him my funny story about my 34 double D. Mike didn't think it's funny either. And he said, Sharon, it took you 20 damn years to get me fired in Cleveland, and I just don't start here. And every time I'd see John, he'd blush. And so the last year we were at spring training with Baltimore, I went up and I said, hey, John, I need to talk to you about my seats. And he said, I'm not talking to you about your seats. I said, seriously? He said, Sharon, what? I can't put you any closer to the, you know. And I said, no, I just need to change the row. And he said, what do you mean the row? And I said, I need 34 long now. He thought that was funny, but mine got fired that year too. Okay, anybody in this room, we're gonna go back to our common themes here. Anybody in this room have a teaching degree, but you've never used it? Oh, I thought maybe we had that in common. How about you married your junior high school sweetheart and got married in college when you were 19 and 20? What's wrong with you people? Anybody have a spouse that traveled? I'm going to get somebody on this one. Traveled half the month, and then the worst was home for 4 months. Oh, I wasn't supposed to read that part. Anybody lost a family member in a plane crash? Anybody have a family member that was fatally shot by a friend at 22 years old? Don't have that in common. Here's going to be one. Anybody lost anyone to cancer? I knew we had that in common. Anyone that has lost a family member to a stroke? We're getting in common. Anybody have an alcoholic in your family or any drug issues? Got that one. Anybody raised 5 kids, 1 with epilepsy? How about somebody that had to face a child getting pregnant before they're married? Ooh, bad kids I have. Does anyone have a kid that married someone from a different culture? How about different religion? Different age, big different age, 12 years. We got you beat on that too. Well, What do we have in common? God created each one of us, and He created us unique. He gave me exactly what I could handle. And I feel so blessed. We might not have much in common when you look and think about, you know, oh my gosh, that's Mike Hargrove's wife. I wish Mike was here, but that's Mike Hargrove's wife, blah, blah, blah. I'm just the same as anybody else, and so is Mike. You know, if you see Mike in Home Depot, and we see this all the time, people come up and you can tell that they know who he is, but they don't know who he is, and they're kind of staring at him. And, excuse me, some people will actually come up and say, I feel like I know you. Well, what are you supposed to say? Oh, yeah? Well, I'm, you know. So Mike's line now is he'll say, have you seen the 10 most wanted people in the post office lately? Poster. Anyway, I just think it's important to think about and realize that each one of us, it's not a surprise to me. It's not a surprise to God that each one of us was going to be here today, and there's a reason. We might not know what that reason is, but He does. It fits into our special life some way. And I think it's real important to live in the moment and always, always know that this is where God thought you should be right now, and try to figure out, what's the purpose of this? You're really going to be scratching your heads when you leave here today. Wonder why I had to go listen to that. But I really think that's important, and I always tried to bloom where I was planted. And believe me, let me tell you about being traded to Cleveland. We got drafted by the Texas Rangers and played 5 years. During the off season we were traded, I was pregnant with our third daughter, our first being all of 4.5. We got traded. When she was 10 days old, we drove from Texas to California and became a member of the San Diego Padres. So not only did we leave Texas for the first time, other than minor league ball, but I mean moved from Texas, but we also had these 3 little girls, and we were going to California. And we got there, and I got to the ballpark and realized I was the only wife that hadn't had a boob job. And my husband could not even keep a job there long enough for me to get one. So we go to the ballpark he goes to the ballpark one day, and he calls me and he said, Sharon, guess what? And I said, what? And he said, we just got traded again. We'd been there 2.5 months. Bought a condo, had 2 cars out there, 3 little girls. I had just decided, God spoke to me and said, I didn't take your family away, just Texas. And I was getting a really good attitude about this is pretty cool when he called and said, we just got traded again. And I said, well, where are we going? And he said, Cleveland. And I said, oh shit, not Cleveland. I'm sorry, I know I say a lot of cuss words, but those aren't cuss words in Texas. Shit, damn, and hell are just part of our language. Sorry, I offended somebody one time. They came up afterwards and said, you really shouldn't talk like that. It's just kind of what I do. So anyway, I did say, oh shit. And Mike said, look, I'm going back to the American League, just, you know, please be with me on this. And I said, okay. So I hung up the phone, and as I was sinking on the floor to bawl my eyes out, I thought, Cleveland. I know 2 things about Cleveland. The river caught on fire and 10-cent beer night. Y'all, who was at 10-cent beer night? I know some hands will come up on that. None of you? How about Lynn Barker's perfect game? Oh, crap, I missed that too. See, I can put my hand up for that. Ugh. I'll tell you that story too. But anyway, so that's, you know, I thought, I can't raise 3 little girls in that horrible town. That's all I knew of it. And I cried and cried, and I thought, oh my gosh, now I've got to pick up and pack this house and these 3 little girls and 2 cars and get to Cleveland, all the way cross country. Anyway, Mike comes home. He flies out the next morning, first class, I might add. And I'm sitting there at the door going, or at the airport going, we'll be fine, hon, don't worry. And What I didn't know is that one of my brothers had been following Mike's unsuccessful tenure with the Padres. And he and his wife and little boys got in their car. He had a little Toyota truck with a camper on the back. Said, Connie, we got to go see Sis. Things can't be going good. This is before he knew we were traded. So he gets in the car, they start driving. They're driving at night. When at 2 in the morning, Benny hears on ESPN radio or something that Mike Hargrove's been traded from the San Diego Padres to the Cleveland Indians. So he does a U-turn on the interstate. And my sister-in-law's in the back of the camper whacking on the window and pull over. I said, what's going on? He said, Mike got traded, we're going the wrong direction. And she said, you turn this car around, go help your sister. So they showed up to help me, thank goodness. And we caravaned 2 cars back to Texas. I dropped the kids off, and then I flew into Cleveland to find us a place to live and went back and got the kids. And someone told us you don't need air conditioning in Cleveland. You need air conditioning in Cleveland. It was not a good start. But anyway, obviously now we have how many years we've been here, and we got kicked out of here and we stayed. Can't get rid of us. I'm looking at the time. Y'all tell me to shut up so you can ask questions. Y'all want to ask questions? Would that be better? Okay. Who's got one? Oh, okay. Well, we already talked about this because when Mike when he got drafted, we went to upstate New York, and we had not a penny, nada. And does anybody remember these big chief tablets? It's my show and tell. They asked me if I had PowerPoint. Here's mine. Anyway, when Mike got drafted, they gave him $100 to go to upstate New York. And I kept track of our expenses. And we spent $7 on a tank of gas. Toll road was $1.35. Gas again at $4.50. We ate for $2.25. Whew. He's a big spender, wasn't he? Took us both out to dinner for $2.25. Gas again at $5.20. Then we got to St. Louis during rush hour traffic. We're from a little town that now still has 3 traffic lights. So we're in rush hour traffic in St. Louis, and I said, get off this thing. And we did right out by the airport in St. Louis, which is the most expensive motel you could have, right? Notice I said motel. And it was $15.53. That Mike bought a paper. I don't have that written down, that nickel paper, because I thought, how can he spend 5 cents on a paper? And so he's reading the paper, and he said, Sharon, the Cardinals are playing in town tonight. Do you want to go to the game? Now, we had never even seen a Major League Baseball game. And here he was in professional ball. So we went in. It was so early when we got there that the gates weren't open yet. So we walked around, we found a little barbecue beef place and went in and got 2 sandwiches, shared a bag of chips, and shared a Coke. And then we sat in the Bob Uecker seats. Before we invented them, maybe. 7 years later, at that game that night, I remember Mike looking over at Mike, and he had this dreamy look, and I said, hon, what are you thinking? And we were kind of newlyweds, so I was still asking, what are you thinking? And I said, hon, what are you thinking? He said, I'm thinking if I have to play 10 years in the big leagues, or 10 years in the minor leagues, to play 1 game on a field like this is going to be worth it. I'm glad he didn't say, hon, what are you thinking? Because I thought, you're a crazy man if you think I'm going to do this for even 2 more days, much less the rest of my life. So we had that meal was $3. And when he got traded 7 years later, he got traded to the San Diego Padres. He had already played 5 years in the big leagues. And he got traded to the Padres, so he's with the National League. The first time he goes into St. Louis. Now remember, I have 3 little girls. We'd just gotten there. He calls me one day and said, Sharon, guess what I had for lunch? And I'm like, you piece of poop. I don't even know if I've had lunch, and I'm going to guess what you had for lunch with your meal money. And I said, I have no idea. And he said, well, I had a barbecue beef sandwich, a bag of chips, and my own Coke. And I thought, wow, that is awesome. And I said, and that right there is why you stayed married to me. so you could tell me that story someday. But isn't it the truth, though, really? You know, if we had not stayed together and he went and found that barbecue place and had that sandwich, he would have had nobody to share that with. And I always think that, you know, there's so many things that come around. We were just talking, having coffee on our deck the other day, and Mike said, you know, so many people keep asking me, do I miss baseball? And he said, I don't ever know how to answer that. And he said, I miss the people in baseball, the friends we made. But he said, I don't miss the rat race of it and the media and all those different things. And he said, but I have really been reflecting on when I first started playing baseball, my biggest prayer to God was, don't let me change who I am. And I can honestly say that he's the same guy I married 47 years ago. He did not let baseball change him. He didn't ever, I mean, y'all may think so, and I've booed him before too, so don't think I haven't. But basically, he's just the same good guy. And another little side story. How we doing time-wise? We went to this small college in Oklahoma. Mike was on a basketball scholarship. And after the basketball season, the baseball coach came up and asked him, Mike, come out for baseball. And he said, well, I don't play baseball. Our high school didn't have baseball. So he hadn't really ever played much baseball. And he says, Mike, we've got to have players. You're an athlete. Come on out for baseball. So he called his dad. He said, Dad, what do you think? He said, Michael, give it a shot. Come on. So Mike told Coach Perkins, okay, I'll come out. Now you think about a character of someone that does that. First of all, he had already earned a scholarship. His season was over. Second of all, he respected his dad's opinion. Third of all, he wasn't afraid to fail. You know, his ego wasn't so big like, ooh, what if I don't make the team? That'll be embarrassing. And that's how he got into this life. Because one man came up and asked him to come out for baseball. Isn't that crazy? Not, like kids you see sitting in the stands at the games dreaming of being a big league ball player. It's pretty neat. Anyway, we went to that game that night and had my little moment of I want to do this for 10 years. And when we got to Geneva, New York, we had $17.09 left in our pocket. Then I wrote this the other day because the same trip, we made the same trip not too long ago. It cost $773. That's in my little bag of tricks. Let's see, what other story do I want to tell you? I'll tell you a good this is for Roseanne. This letter came to our house inviting Mike to big league camp after a year and a half in the minor leagues. That's real unusual. I was substitute teaching. Mike was selling crop insurance and out of town. This is way before cell phones. So we couldn't reach each other from Monday to Friday. So I get home from school one day and look in our mailbox, and there's a little deal saying we have a certified letter we need to sign for. Post office is closed. So I go to the postmaster's house. I know him. And I said, you've got to come get me that certified letter. And he said, oh, come on, let's go. Everybody in town wants to know what it is. It was it was from Arlington, Texas, and it says Texas Rangers up here, and it was a certified letter. So everybody, was all excited. So I opened it, Irvin, the postmaster, and I opened it, and I read the letter, and it was from Billy Martin inviting Mike to big league camp. So I told everybody. And when Mike got home, this is about what this envelope looked like. And he read the letter and he goes, oh my God, I'm invited to big league camp. And he said, I gotta go call my dad. And I said, I've already told him. And I gotta call Uncle Lanny. He already knows. I don't think he got to tell anybody. Just saying, I just wanted, we're married, we're one person, right? So anyway, we've had some pretty crazy times. I know we lost 2 World Series, but we went to 2 World Series. And Mike will never, I know if he were here, you would be asking questions. And one would be, why did you keep Jose Mesa, blah, 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 right? I know a lot of you can raise your hands on that one. And he would say, you go, who you took to the dance, you leave with the dance. That's who took us to the dance. Jose Mesa closed out 29 games that year. If he had left Mike Jackson in and we had the same outcome, everybody would have been, why didn't you put Jose Mesa in? Right? You know that route, don't you? So anyway, I'm just saying, and plus he's never gotten over it. Just so you know, he still doesn't like himself very much for that outcome. That was actually on his birthday, 7th game of the World Series. We're in Miami, and I've got all of our kids. We're in the stands, nervous wreck, 7th game of the World Series, Mike's birthday. I look up, and Jarrett Wright, who was, 21 or 22 at the time, is pitching the 7th game of the World Series. His 6'10", blonde, gorgeous, boob job fiance is in the stands, combing her hair, and I go over to her and I said, Tara, I literally took her like this. Tara, look at me. We have been in this game 22 years before we got into a playoff game. So I never looked like you, but I didn't start out looking like this. This is not an easy game. And your fiance is pitching the 7th game of the World Series, and I kind of like for you to get excited about it before I rip your little blonde hair off. I'm just saying. Okay, so anyway, I know I'm just all over the place. I'm sorry. I'm just so excited I got to talk longer than 20 minutes. Usually they say you got 20 minutes. I said that all. Okay, but I know who gets to go to work today. I retired. I retired before I ever started. We have Sunday dinner at our house every Sunday that we're in town, and all of our kids are sitting around the dining room table, and we have a rule: everybody has to stay at the table till everybody's through, and through talking I've added, so they don't just. So we're talking one day, and our son Andy was getting ready to go for a job interview, and this has been pretty recently. And I said, hey, Andy, when you go for that job interview, and I start in, do you need to tell them, blah, 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 blah. And I look, and I have all eyes on me, and that's pretty unusual. And I'm thinking, oh, they think I'm really saying some profound stuff. And then when I finished, finally, Andy looks at me and goes, really, Mom? When's the last job interview you went on? And I went, well, that would be 0. So I realized why everybody was looking at me like, what is this fool talking about? Just go in there and say this, this, and this. Anyway, so we obviously were not happy about being traded, or fired from Cleveland. I remember Mike calling me. He went to the ballpark, and he called me, and he said, Sharon, guess what? And I said, we just got fired. And he goes, how'd you know? I asked him not to tell anybody till I could tell my family I'm just leaving the ballpark. And I said, honey, it doesn't take long to say you're fired. It takes a long time to say, this is what we did wrong, this is what we're going to do next year, blah, blah, blah. And so he said, if you'll do me a favor, I'm not going to come straight home. He said, I need to drive around and think, because I don't want to say in a 20-minute interview something that'll mess up a 20-year career. And I respected that, because I was the same person that had that barbecue beef sandwich with him. So I understood he didn't need to come running to my open arms for comfort. That's not what he needed right then. But what he did need from me was, will you call the kids and tell them? And then he said, will you call Mom and Dad? I'm so ashamed. And then he said, will you call Bobby D and set up interviews? He said, they need to come to the house, and I'm going to do one interview. I'm not going to do one-on-one interviews. I said, okay. So before I could get any calls made, the little satellite trucks start showing up on our little calm cul-de-sac. Bless you. On our little calm cul-de-sac in Richfield. And so I'm calling all the kids and everything, and I'm thinking, all these guys are out there, and I look at the time, oh my gosh, it's time to pick up Shelley at the bus stop. So, I mean, it's a whole half mile. God forbid she walk. So I'm pulling the car out of the driveway, excuse me. Go down to the end of the street. She's 9 at the time. And I pick her up, and I think, oh gosh, I gotta tell Shelley what's going on, because she's gonna wonder what all these deals are doing at our house. So I said, Shelley, listen, I gotta tell you something, honey. Daddy got fired today. And she goes, oh, Mom. I said, oh, it'll be all right. And she goes, well, you could have at least waited till I had my snack before you told me. And when she told me that, I thought, you know, that's right. We'll still have a snack. We'll still eat tonight. It's going to be okay. So anyway, we get back home, and I go, I should take water out to these guys, or I should do this or that. Anyway, by the time Mike did the interview, he was really going along really, really well. And you can, John Hart will remember this, but you can still tell him this. So at one point, they said, so Mike, you, what are you going to do with your spare time now? I know you like to hunt and fish. Not hunt and fish, he hates fishing. Hunt and golf. So are you going to be doing some of that? And Mike goes, I don't think it's be a good time for me to have a gun in my hand. At which time I walked over and said, I think there's enough of this, let's go in. So we went in the house, and then the TV's got Mike's picture on it, and it had Mike Hargrove, Cleveland Indians. It said 1979-1999. And I'm looking at it and go, well, he didn't die. But then I thought, he did quite a bit with that dash, that time in between. And God gives you, you've probably all heard that, the dash thing, but God gives you a birth date and a death date, and what you do with that dash in between is what you give back. And I thought, we're leaving here with our heads high. We've done all we could. It was probably time for Mike to go. I would be the first to admit that. But anyway, it was still tough, and it was 10 years later, after we'd been with Baltimore for 4 years, and I got him fired for my bra size. And then we went to Seattle for 3.5 years, and I'm the one, don't blame him for being a quitter, because he would never quit. One night after a game, he was pacing and cussing and going nuts at home, which I had never, ever, ever, ever seen him do. That's one thing I always admired about Mike, is that he left the game at the ballpark. And he was carrying on so much, I thought he was going to have a heart attack. And I said, sit down. And he sat down. Well, before that, I told our daughter, Shelley, and her boyfriend, we had just gotten there the day before, I said, Shelley, y'all remember Snow Opening Day? Remember, Mike was the manager of Seattle, and we were playing the Indians, opening day of that year, 2007. And it started snowing, and Mike was stalling, and nobody liked Mike that day either. So we were having to come back and forth to Cleveland several times, just one off day to play games to make that up. So he was exhausted. And things in Seattle, there's a lot of computer guys, and they were a lot of minority owners were helping with that, with his decisions, tried to. And it wasn't going over well. And, that was another, I see you looking at your watch, I need to quit, don't I? See, I raised 5 kids. I see, Alan. Okay. You want me to finish this story or stop? Okay. Sorry. Can I come back next week? Okay, I won't finish that story. We'll finish it some other time. I feel bad. Finish the story? What? Okay. So, what was the story? What? Okay. So anyway, they were, the final straw was one of them wanted to put a yellow poster board in the clubhouse and list every player and their on-base percentage. And if they improved during the homestand, they got a star by their name. You can't make this stuff up, right? So anyway, Mike was just ranting and raving about it, and Shelley and Pat were doing a puzzle up on the dining room table, and I went up and I said, Shelley, I didn't think I'd ever say this, but take your boyfriend, go upstairs to your bedroom, shut the door, and do not come out until I come get you. Because I had never seen Mike acting like this, and I felt so bad. And then I went downstairs and I said to Mike, sit down right now. And he sat down, and I sat down on the floor and put my hand up in his lap, and I said, Uncle. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, it's time to quit. I said, Mike, I'm not going to lose you to this game. You have always loved this game. I know it's been hard at times, but you have never acted like this. You've never felt like this, and I'm not going to lose you over this game. I have everything plus I've ever wanted. It's nothing to do with money. It has to do with you and your health. And it's enough. You've raised 5 kids. We've put them all through college. We've gone through weddings. It's all good. Just stop. And he quit the next day. I think I threw a life preserver out there, and he grabbed hold of it and couldn't let go. He would have never thought of quitting. He just was, he never would have. So I said that was the last story, but it's not. So 10 years later, after being fired from Cleveland, we came back here. We had always come back here. And we had this, they were interviewing managers. Mark Shapiro was the GM here. He was interviewing after Eric Wedge left, and they were interviewing Manny Acta, Bobby Valentine, blah, blah, blah. And so I kept saying, Mike, would you ever want to come back here and manage? And he goes, God, I would love that. So I said, why don't you call Mark and just throw your name in the hat? And he said, Sharon, you know people don't do that. And I said, I know, but you're not a person. Just do it. So he called Mark and said, Mark, I'd be interested in that position. That's all he said. Well, anyway, we kept seeing people be coming in and being interviewed, and they never called Mike, and we kept thinking, And then the day before they named Manny Acta, they called Mike, and Mark said, listen, we've been thinking about it. You've got such a good reputation here and a good legacy, and we just don't want to take a chance on messing that up. Mike said, I don't care about my legacy. You're never going to take away what we did in the 90s here. I love this team. I love this city. I'd love to come back here. Well, we've already named Manny Acta. Well, they hadn't announced it yet. So we go do a fundraiser thing, and then we go to IHOP. Ooh, another big spender taking me to IHOP. And the manager recognized Mike and said, I'm going to put y'all in the back so nobody will bother you. And I'm like, don't put us in the back. Mike won't talk to me. I won't even have people to look at. Can't use my extended fork. This is not good. Well, this man came by. Here's a picture of him. I know you really can't see it. But he just walked by, walked up to Mike, patted his shoulder, said, hiya, Mike, and sat down. And I looked over at Mike, and he just burst out into tears. He said, I think God just walked by and patted me and said, it's okay. And I can't read the letter because Mr. President's staring at me really big now. But one of our daughters worked out at the Cleveland airport, and she came one Sunday dinner and, hey, Dad, here's a letter somebody asked me to get to you. And he's watching TV and leaves it laying there. And I said, I better read that too. So I pick it up, and in essence, the letter says, my granddad saw you and your wife at the IHOP, and you picked up his tab, and he thought that was so neat, and he wanted to talk to you so bad because he loved you as a player and a manager, but he didn't want to bother you. And he called the Indians to get your address so he could send you a thank you note, but I'm not sure he ever did that because he died 4 days later. And she went on to say, I'm glad he finally got to meet you because I graduated with one of your daughters, and he saw you at graduation, and my dad wouldn't let him say anything to you. He said, thanks for giving my grandpa one last hurrah. Anyway, 4 days later, we get this letter. It's short enough, and I promise I'm quitting on this one. It was dated October 15, 2009, so it was exactly 10 years to the day that Mike got fired. And we looked back and said probably to the hour. So God did come touch Mike and say it's okay. It says, Mike and Mrs. Hargrove. It's just great how surprise gestures by others can make the sunshine on a rainy day in Cleveland. Your generous action to pick up my tab at the IHOP on Brook Park Road really impressed me and awoke many great memories of Indians baseball. You gave us many good seasons, and you would certainly look good again in that Indians dugout. Lots of luck in that regard. And many thanks to you both for my pancakes and berries. John Uhas. So that's a pretty good thing to end on, isn't it? But anyway, everything happens for a reason, if I said it. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry. Get all my props here.
One or two questions?
Well, heck. Anybody have any questions?
So I was going to talk about one memory from the past. My daughter and I have a genuine Hargrove signed baseball. a Sharon Hargrove signed.
Uh-oh.
We had won the trip to Baltimore to see the
jeez.
Orioles play Boston. That was part of the fundraiser for leukemia. That,
How fun.
I think it was one of the people I worked with, her brother is Missy's husband.
Oh, Mike Deese?
Yeah.
That son-in-law?
Yeah. Well, I won't ask how it's going, but,
No.
but anyway, but it was a really enjoyable event. But we were there, and we were sitting with your Cleveland friends, and then you came by and signed a baseball for my daughter, who's actually a cop now. And
Oh, good. I hope she
and then
just-
later it started raining. You came by with raincoats for us. We thought, boy, this is the most gracious manager's wife we've ever met.
Oh, thank
The only one we met, but. But we figured if we met others, you would. Anyway.
You know, I have this right here.
But my question is that, so you've lived all these different places, obviously places with probably better weather than Cleveland, but you've maintained these really strong ties to Cleveland. What is it about the city that this was the place you wanted to?
You know, I think our kids it was the first time when we came here, we had little bitty kids, and then we went back to the minor leagues for 4 or 5 years to work our way back. And so they were shuffled. Our kids sometimes went to 3 different schools a year. And so when we got back here, John, after Mike started managing, told Mike, you have to live in Cleveland if you're going to be here. If you're going to manage, you need to be here year-round. And we didn't really want to do that because we like to keep our roots in Texas, and we wanted our kids to know their aunts and uncles and cousins. That's really, really important to us. But it was kind of a good push for us to, okay, we've got to stop this, dragging these kids in and out of schools. Some of them were in junior high by then, and Mike had met so many wonderful men that went to St. Ignatius. We only have 1 son, 4 daughters. I don't know why God didn't do the opposite for me, but he didn't. And Mike really wanted our son to go to Ignatius in high school. And he's probably the only one that, that was really, really important to Mike. So we did move here year-round. And then our kids met kids in this area and married, and we have 3 that live within 30 minutes of us, 1 in Cincinnati and 1 in Chicago. So we're, our whole adult life, we didn't ever have a choice where we lived. So once we grew up and didn't have somebody telling us where we were going to live, it was a tough decision. It really was. But we're real thankful. The question I was asking is anybody's ever culture, blah, blah, blah. Our oldest daughter graduated from college and came to her daddy, of course. Dad, what did I get for a graduation gift? And I said, how about that $50,000 piece of paper in your hand? It cost you nothing. That's kind of a gift. But it's daddy's girl. So she went on a cruise, took a friend, and met her Jamaican husband. And we have 4 beautiful grandchildren. He's a great guy. But, this was 1 month exactly after Mike was fired here. Had a little on our plate through then. It was, when you're from the Panhandle of Texas, there's still not a black family lives in our hometown. And here she comes home ready to marry this Jamaican that's 12 years older than her, and it's awesome. I always say those are Mike's children by his first marriage. When they screw up, I say that, which is often. Yes, sir?
One question about Mike's career. He's famous for the human rain
Yes.
tactics. What is the deal with that?
What is the deal with that? When we were in the minor leagues, the first year he was in the minor leagues, he hurt his thumb, I don't remember, got hit with a ball or something, and the nerves went dead in it. So he used to make this gauze pad that he would push down on his thumb to protect it. Then he realized it was ticking off the pitchers. So he just kind of added a few things to irritate him. Plus, Mike he's a kind of a deep thinker. Opposites attract. And you know how you see golfers kind of mentally thinking, blah, blah, blah. He kind of has always had that technique with hitting. Always try to think through, what do you think he's going to throw here, and what am I looking for, and where do I want to hit it, blah, blah, blah. So I guess it worked for him, but it bothered the pitchers mainly. He couldn't do that now because they have a clock on the players when they step out. Probably because of Mike. See, got to be remembered for something. All right, this has been awesome. Thank y'all so much.
I was going to say, I knew that Sharon heard that. Sharon, thank you so much. It was absolutely fantastic. I remember taking my sons to the old municipal stadium when Mike was a player, and there were maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people in that cavernous place. We were usually in the Mike Euchre seats, or Bob Euchre seats. And then, when Mike was the manager, we went to a lot of games at what was then Jacobs Field, now Progressive Field. So they've grown up Tribe fans and Mike Hargrove fans. And as I told you earlier, our younger son loved baseball so much he made it a career in the front office. So, it's great. Thank you. Thanks to today's greeters, Phil Tobin and Joe Avella. Denrich, thank you as always for being ready at a moment's notice if we need help. Tom Page, Tom Tobin, James Field, and Ron Barnhouse, thank you, gentlemen, for setting up all of the audio visual and running the tape, because this will be on Hudson Cable Television, community television. Yeah, and it will be the best watched program of a long time, I'm certain.